3, 2, 1. This is Radio Days Africa 2021. Audio amplified. Download the Radio Days Africa app. Search Radio Days Africa in your app store.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this year's Radio Days Africa session. This is the Radio Days Africa Fringe, the campus radio question. My name is Shoeshoe, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our sponsors and supporters for the Radio Days Africa conference. And I'd like to mention the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, that's CAS Media Africa, for the continued support of the Radio Days conference throughout the years. This year, they've partnered with us again. And also today's session specifically supported by the US Embassy in Pretoria. So good morning, everyone. All of my colleagues from campus radio stations across the country and other parts of the world. I think we're going to have a really interesting session today. I'd like to then just call on the stage some of my colleagues there. Precious Pheelwane from SMMU FM. This is the Sefako Makgatho University FM. Also, we have Michael Bauer from Tuks FM. He's the programs manager. Refilo Mudipane from Radio TEF. She's a music compiler there. Also, Charonike from Park FM. Good morning, everyone, and welcome.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
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 Thank you. That's great. Precious, as you can see, your background looks really nice and very interesting. You do come from a medical university, formerly Medunsa Sefako Makgatho University FM. 2021 and the 2020 started, the 2 years are all almost 1 year. For us, people in campus radio, we've been immensely affected. Our core audiences, who are mainly students, aren't in their normal residencies. They are, studying from home. How has the pandemic shaped the way you do radio at SMMU FM?
All right. I just want to say it's SMU, Sefako Makgatho University.
Oh, yes, SMU, not SMMU.
Not the double M, yes.
I should probably stay away from acronyms.
It's all right. It's SMU FM. We are, of course, based at Sefako Makgatho Health Science University. I think the difference with us is that we are based on a healthcare science university that is all about healthcare. So with some of the challenges that happened, last year when we started with level 5, was that most of our presenters are actually, doing clinicals. So they had to stop and continue. The fact that all the students had to leave campus in the beginning, that also disturbed our programming. So in terms of the beginning of lockdown, our programming had to change entirely. We literally used about 6 presenters to present all the shows for the 21 days, because we also had to cut down as who comes in, who's available, and also considering where about they were. So luckily we have students and we have community members that actually work on the campus. But through it all, being healthcare sciences, you have students who do clinicals. So most of the time they're available, then suddenly not available because they're also on call. So I think the challenges have been a bit different, but one of the things we're able to do is actually connect more with what's happening through the community, because now we became more trusted as a healthcare scientist to say they know exactly what's happening. So we started a show called the SMU COVID-19 program. And through that program, we could educate people through anything and everything that has to do with COVID. So they can actually connect with the experts. We speak about from COVID when you're pregnant, COVID when you're old, COVID when you have comorbidity. So we get deep into it and we bring the experts that we have from our side onto campus. But overall, I think it has been a time where, as a campus station in COVID, we were really able to step up and actually just shine, and people started noticing the radio station a bit more. So that much I'm grateful for.
Well done. Very interesting. We'll get to what stations have had to do to actually provide content to audiences that's reliable, focusing on the pandemic later on. But Mike, Tuks FM was one of the few campus stations that actually started off and had people already broadcasting from home, while some of us were still trying to figure out how to use the technology to allow for presenters to work from home. How has the pandemic shaped Tuks FM and how you are broadcasting?
Yeah, so just on that note, one of the first things that we needed to do was adapt very, very quickly to the pandemic setting. And then we actually had people broadcasting via WhatsApp, which was an idea that came about through necessity, pretty much. So we had a series of producers who were sitting at home. We had a series of broadcasters who were sitting at home. Even our music compilers were sitting at home, and they were literally broadcasting through WhatsApp and through TeamViewer. And that idea came actually from somebody who was a presenter at Tuks FM back in the day, who now currently works for 5FM. And at the time, we were a bit lost. And my station manager at the time and I discussed in detail what we were able to do with our capabilities, because at the end of the day, we don't have fiber in our studios yet. We don't have like a great sort of technical setup, and ultimately what we needed to do was we needed to be very creative. So to answer your question, what we're actually currently doing at the moment is we're trying to be as creative as possible with the environment that we're currently working in. We've had a series of outbreaks at the station, in the sense that we've had, especially now in the last couple of weeks, we've had many COVID-19 positive cases, which means that we've needed to be very creative in the way in which we schedule our programming. And we've got people coming in at certain times to broadcast, and then we don't have people coming in at certain times, just purely based on the fact that they can't be in the studio and you know, infecting each other and that sort of thing. So to answer your question, what we've needed to do is we've needed to be very creative in the way in which we achieve certain things. And the other thing is we need to be very safe as well. I think my major concern is balancing broadcasting and giving broadcasting in South Africa the respect that it deserves, and also giving the broadcasters respect as well, because at the end of the day, you're not just affecting the broadcasters, you're also affecting their families, you're also affecting the people that they live with, you're also affecting the people who they are in transport with. So that's been something that's been very challenging for me personally, because of the fact that my mentality is, you know, broadcast 24/7 and don't stop until the station is on fire, kind of thing. And even then, if the station is on fire, find a fire extinguisher and carry on. I think that the major problems with COVID-19 has needed to be a safety issue, and it's made us be very creative in the way in which we problem solve. And it's very easy to sit and look at other stations and go, oh, those stations are doing really well, or those stations aren't doing as well as they could. I think that each radio station, and especially everybody on this panel, can agree that each radio station is unique and comes with their own unique problems. And our problems, whilst they are very campus based, are also very situationally based as well. We've got lots of broadcasters who stay in reses that can no longer broadcast. We've got lots of broadcasters who stay in places that need to catch taxis or trains or use public transport to get to and from the station. And we've needed to be very cognizant about that. So yeah.
Thank you for that. And I just realized that I just said Tuks FM. And for someone who might not know, Tuks is attached to the University of Pretoria. So you broadcast from the capital, essentially. That's your area.
Yes.
But thank you very much, and well done on being that. And moving to another station that's also played a big role in covering content and remaining connected to its audiences throughout this difficult time of the pandemic is Park FM. So Charonike, you the station manager there, you've had to really be innovative in ensuring that the station continues in this time. So tell us how you've had to do things differently in the past year and a half.
Thank you so much. I think I have to agree with what Mike said, especially because when the 27th of March 2020 came, we were all running around like headless chickens. We had no idea what was going on, because at the end of the day, you're working with volunteers that, again, headed home, and connectivity was a major issue, because let's all be honest with each other. We do know that our volunteers have data for TikTok and for Instagram, but not necessarily always for what you need them to have it for. So it was very difficult. And also, like Mike mentioned, is we are not necessarily in the position to equip our broadcasters to wherever they're going to live broadcast. So I never thought I would say this, but a year and a half later, I'm a little bit grateful for COVID-19 and what the pandemic forced us into, like he said, being creative. I think for us, we thought we were teaching our guys to be producers. And then suddenly 2020 came and we were like, oh no, they are actually just building puzzles up until this stage. So what we had to do is every single broadcaster was suddenly a producer as well, because the capacity in terms of pre-producing a lot of our content, because again, you've got guys with connectivity issues, and even the data that they necessarily get from the university is nighttime data. So I cannot tell you how after 12 o'clock at night, my phone was blowing up because the next day show needs to come in, but that needs to be produced. Audio needs to be cleaned up. So what we did was, for lack of a better description, to force every single person at the station to suddenly step up as producers, which, looking back for us and for them going forward, was a major thing with regards to skills development, because now more than ever, it's so important for us as skills developers to make sure that we don't only train broadcasters or journalists, we train well-rounded radio professionals. And another thing that was very difficult, and to this day as well, is, and Precious mentioned it earlier, with you guys having clinicals and with us actually being connected to the university, it's not like any other station that, for example, was an essential service in the initial lockdown. We connected physically, geographically to the university. So let's say, for example, guys who are doing BA communications, they're not falling into the people that have campus access. And unfortunately, and I do understand this as well, for safety reasons, they don't necessarily see the campus broadcasters as an essential service, because the only reason that a lot of our volunteers are allowed on campus is for academic reasons. So the guys who aren't necessarily have to be on campus, they don't have campus access. And unfortunately, we're not in a position to give them campus access. So that has been a major challenge. But I have to say, I'm incredibly proud of the team, because now you're also working again with volunteers that, despite, and Mike mentioned it earlier, and I feel quite the same, we forget that this is our 9 to 5. This is not their 9 to 5. So we want them to keep broadcasting, to keep the station broadcasting and still have that level of quality. But they are dealing with suddenly have to being exams remotely. They have to do their classes remotely. They have no idea what's going on. And now I'm breathing down their necks as well. So I think that has been a major challenge for us, but we've survived. We've been ducks trying to keep calm at the top and kicking heavily under the water.
Yeah, and I do want us to get back to also that point of us as campus radio station, because we are restricted in that we come out of these universities. Our almost community license is almost secondary to our core mandate of being university-based, and I'd like for us to revisit that point. But first, let's go to the University of Limpopo, TEFLOP, and hear from Pheelwane, who's a music compiler there. And I think a lot of stations had to automate a lot during the pandemic or in the past year and a half. What has it been like for you, Pheelwane, as a music compiler, in ensuring that your content is balanced, but also you're not running out of music to put up, while the guys producing content are trying to balance their license requirements and ensuring that your station, which is TEF FM, remains on air?
Okay, so just putting it out there, it's actually Radio Turf. And also, at the time, I was actually the chief producer at the time that we went into the pandemic. And I can honestly, listening to everybody that has spoken so far, say that I feel grateful that we did a little bit better. The way that our station has structured itself is that we try to balance the community with the campus population, and that's how we gather and balance out our volunteers at the station. And so the core people that are there are actually sort of like from the community, and so we then liaise with the Department of Media Studies to bring in students and rotate them so that as many students can get experiential training. So when the pandemic hit, the students, they left. They're like, oh, please, bye. We gotta go. We gotta be safe. Everybody's gotta be safe. But we were able to then have the community members around still being able to come into the station. And for those people that were co-hosting, the core thing was to dismantle that so that there's that social distancing thing going on. So there was one person per show in order for us to keep things safe. And there was very strict measures that were placed on the station by the university to make sure that we are complying and that we're not putting each other at risk, So that was the thing. And in terms of the music department, I wasn't in the music department at the time, but because we worked closely together, I am aware that a lot of it then started moving through the emails, songs, information, the requests for interviews, and then obviously all the interviews were now telephonically. So that is basically, we're still doing that even now. We're still on level 4, so we're still doing that now. We don't have artists coming in like they used to, which is just something else. It's very interesting because now artists just send, oh, I'd like an interview, here's my song, and all the reset details. And then the station has got to call the artist, and then sometimes, we do all the work now, whereas previously the artists are the ones that used to come in and do the legwork for their own music. But I feel like it's, in an African sense, we'd say diatlatswana. I don't know how to say it in English, but we assist each other. So there was a time when the artists had to do all the legwork, and now it's kind of, I guess, station's time to do a bit of that work. But I truly feel grateful because our people were there, they were committed. Unless the person was sick, a lot of them went for a very long time without taking a break, working each and every week, So in that sense, I can say, I guess we did do a little bit better. And our community members, they played along, to be honest. If we needed interviews, we needed content providers, they made sure that they're available on the phone to assist us. So that's basically how we've been getting through this period.
Thank you very much, Refilwe. And yes, just to note, it is indeed Radio TEF. I'm not reading my notes correctly. I do want to say I see a lot more people have joined in. Good morning, welcome. This is the Radio Days Fringe conference. So make sure you register for the upcoming conference that's or upcoming session that's coming up later on. So go to the Radio Days Africa website and also download the Radio Days Africa app. You'd be able to see interesting sessions and link onto some of the podcasts and great content that's going to be coming up from these sessions. My name is Shoeshoe, and I'm in conversation with my colleagues from other campus radio stations in the country. That's Precious Pheelwane from SMU FM, that's Sefako Makgatho University. She's the station manager there. Michael Bauer from Tuks FM, that's attached to the University of Pretoria. Refilwe Modipane, who you've just heard from Radio TEF, that's coming out from the Limpopo University, and Charonike from Park FM. And that's Northwest University. Does Northwest have 2 radio stations, Charonike?
So we have 3. We are, yes, we've got...
For the interest of everyone also listening in, how does that work? So you are at Park. Which are the other 2 stations?
So it's very, very interesting. So about 12 years ago, the Northwest University, it was a combined the merger, and then what happened is we've got a campus in Mafikeng, which is Northwest University FM, broadcasting from there, and then we've got our Vanderbijl Park campus, which is River FM, and then for us in Potchefstroom. So you can imagine what a headache that was for ICASA after the merger, because suddenly you've got one parent company, but we've got 3 different stations. I think what helped there is we have absolutely no overlapping footprints. And very different cultures on all 3 campuses. I have to say it's an incredible journey working with my incredible colleagues, Itumeleng and Puso on the other 2 campuses, to capture the culture of a greater community across 2 provinces, in 3 different stations, but under one blanket.
Yeah, thank you for that clarity. That's very interesting. I think TUT, or Tswana University of Technology, is another university that's got more than one campus station. And this brings us to the question that I also wanted to ask around the mandate of campus radio stations in the country. We do know that our licenses term us as community radio stations. So yes, we are broadcasting to a community of interest, which are the universities that we're broadcasting from. But Mike, I'll start with you. Your understanding of us, you know, we are broadcasting from campuses, but we are community stations. How are you connecting with your community beyond just the university, walls, so as to say?
Sure. That's a great question. And I'm so glad that you've highlighted that, because a lot of people will look at campus stations and say, okay, cool, they only broadcast to a certain area and they only do certain things for the community. And I get very upset when people say that. On Friday afternoon, my acting station manager was filling out an application for funding. And one of the things that we looked at was who is it that we actually broadcast to on a daily basis, and who do we actually who do we aim to inform, entertain, and educate? And the answer to that is quite simple. For Tuks FM, we focus on young people in Pretoria. Our license dictates that we obviously need to broadcast a certain amount of English and Afrikaans, but our main focus is young people in Pretoria. And it doesn't matter whether you are somebody who studies at the University of Pretoria, or you study at TUT, or you study at Boston, or you study at Varsity College. There are many academic institutions in Pretoria that we know we have people listening to us. So instead of saying, okay, cool, just because we broadcast at the University of Pretoria and our license holder is UP, we're only going to focus on people who live in this res or live in Hatfield or whatever it is. We don't do that at all. We focus on young people in Pretoria. So when there are issues in our area that directly affect young people, and I'm defining young people in a certain age demographic, but I'm not excluding school learners as well. What we focus on is being as focused on the issue at hand as possible. So I'll use the example of GBV. A couple of years ago, 2 years ago, during a massive, not only in Cape Town, but I think nationwide, a massive outcry. Many gender-based violence issues were highlighted. So instead of us looking at our community and saying, okay, cool, this is how we're going to do it, and we're only going to speak about certain things, and what we did was we looked at the issue itself. So we said, okay, cool, gender-based violence affects these kinds of people in these kinds of ways. Gender-based violence affects our audience in this specific way. So we attack the issue as opposed to saying, okay, cool, let's focus on people in Hatfield, because we know for a fact that we've got people from Mamelodi, Garankuwa, Soshanguve, Midrand, Centurion who are listening to our station, who are coming in and out of Pretoria, and we can't exclude them. So what we do is, from a programming standpoint, and as a result from a content point of view, is we look at what it is that we are trying to achieve as well. So the issue is the first thing that we'll take a look at. So it doesn't matter whether it's fees must fall or gender-based violence or alcohol addiction or whatever the issue is that we're looking to do. We focus on the issue first, and that then allows us to be a little bit more broad in terms of the people that we connect with. And obviously the main focus here is making sure that our listener feels a part of our broadcasting 24/7. And so to answer your question, that's kind of what we focus on. We'll look at the issue first, and then look at what it is that we're trying to achieve. One of the things that we've also been very fortunate in our programming mandates is we've been able to push the boundaries a little bit. So when I said earlier that we look at people who we look at our community as young people, and we don't only focus on what normal radio stations would consider a normal listening profile. So 2 years ago, for example, we did we did something where we focused on deaf school learners, and we incorporated deaf school learners into our community. The year before that, we did a charity drive where we focused on blind school learners. So we don't only, as I said, we don't only focus on the University of Pretoria's students. We focus on people who are young at heart, young people who listen to the music that we play, obviously, and we build from there.
Well done, Mike. I'm taking some notes there. This is how you win the conference or the awards at the Radio Awards South Africa. So I think everyone should be inspired to come up with these ideas and connect with communities. I do want us to talk about issues relating to our role in covering
Yes.
student activism, for example, like fees must fall, and also how we interpret issues that are happening in our society. I think issues around
Yes.
mental health and abuse in general is something that's very big for campus radio station as we speak to young people. And Precious, I want to come to you. You do come from a community, and you are very connected with that community. And how have you dealt with issues as a campus station in that community? How have you involved your community in covering issues, essentially? And maybe we could just take off from what Mike is saying. Maybe we can focus on issues around gender-based violence.
Thank you, Shoeshoe. I think in terms of, what Mike has said, I'm just going to add and try not to repeat what he said, but we've definitely had to be creative in how we're covering content. And with that, you did speak about, GBV and also mental health issues. Mental health issues, I think, became bigger during the time of COVID because people had to quarantine, people had to isolate. So that was one of the main focuses. I think with us connecting with the community has also been through community engagement that we do with the university. And because the station does sit under marketing communication, we kind of know what is mostly happening on our campus. So the one thing that we did focus on last year was the fact that post level 5 and level 4, a lot of people were not going to the dentist, something as simple as that. So our oral health science department actually reached us to us to say, can you communicate to the community to say they can come back? It's still important to still go see your dentist, but they're thinking, but COVID, the mouth, how is this going to work? So we had to bring a couple of experts on and actually explain that it's still important to do your regular, checkups twice a year and all that, because there was a huge decline in the number of people, because our Gauteng dentist department actually sits in the university, but there was a huge decline. Now the students are sitting there trying to add up their clinical hours, but there's no patients. So we actually assisted in that. In terms of mental health, we got our campus doctor involved because, with the students having to, deal with a lot of patients having to be in ICU during COVID, there were a lot of mental health issues that was, with our students. And we started now, having more talks around it. We started having more even adverts about it and bringing on obviously the different experts. But we realized that the community at large, because our focus was more internal, now we had to focus externally, but our community at large that we can reach started actually being more active. That's why I said in the beginning that it actually made our station shine a bit more. But in terms of the one thing that you realize is that ICASA kind of makes campus radios trapped within the footprint sometimes, because we are in Garangua, it is north of Pretoria. We wish we could, actually cover the whole of Pretoria because we're coming at a different angle when it comes to this. But I think if we could, it would be great sometimes to actually have that footprint being a bit bigger. But going online is the one way that we realized we can connect more. Our streaming services actually became more popular during this time. So we started streaming to people, but then it comes the data issue. Do I actually listen to the radio station or do I use it for my online classes? So I think well, TikTok always somehow fits into it. But I think, with us, we connected through community engagement. Last year, we had an unfortunate incident where one of our students there was a GBV incident that took place on one of our off-campus residences. And we actually had a march last year, and it also happened this year. So even if it's something that's happening in the community where our university is based, we actually do take part in whatever the community is involved in. So we're trying to push the community engagement to a greater level in any way that we can, because it is very important that, we bring the community in. Although, yes, like Mike said, they might just see us as for the students, for the young, but you'll be surprised the amount of people who actually are still young at heart and will continue to listen to a campus station.
That's great. And I do want to ask this question. Are we ambitious enough to go beyond Garankua, as you are saying? And as you rightly put it, digital or streaming has allowed us to be able to do this. Refilwe, this is the question for you. Are you seeing Radio TEF go beyond just the borders of the university? And are you reaching out, at least if your license issued by ICASA isn't allowing you to do that? Are you using streaming facilities to be able to reach your audiences beyond that?
Well, at the moment, not. I think a lot of people don't know this, but Radio Turf actually was in the process of getting a studio upgrade. So actually, for the past few months, we've been broadcasting from a van. So it's been really tricky. And Radio Turf, prior to that,
now we all know your problems.
it's been tough. It's been rough. Like, hey, but the thing about it, and the thing that makes me comfortable enough to even say this, is because as a community radio station, there's certain things that you deal with, and people don't even know it. They just hear the radio is on and all is okay and everything is okay, but you might be struggling with certain things. So things like live streaming have not been accessible to us until now. Now we can start thinking about, oh, can reach people this way and that way. We have people in Venda that send us messages like, oh, we love Radio Turf. Maybe they heard it driving through, I don't know. But we know for a fact that they were not able to actually listen in to us. But now we'll be able to access them, so that is very important. And Radio Turf has been in existence for a very long time. But to push, and again, you have to see the good and the bad around the pandemic. Yes, there's a lot of bad, but one of the good is that it forces stations to start making those steps that you were thinking, oh, well, welcome to radio station. Are people actually reaching us? Our main audience is reaching us. But once something like this happens, it says you got to push the envelope. You've got to reach even farther. So I think that is what is happening, that our management really pushed for us to start getting access to these doors that were previously like, we knew they had to be accessed, but it wasn't an emergency. So yeah, we definitely are heading in that direction. So it's something to look forward to as well. Yeah, for us.
That's great. Charonike, you've got 3 stations. How ambitious are you? Do you want to amalgamate the stations and create one conglomerate that's going to reach the whole of Northwest? Are you looking to grow beyond just being a Northwest Potchefstroom campus station?
I think, sure, what's very interesting about our 3 campuses is we are 3 very different campuses. And at the end of the day, I think that's why it works, is because if you take a look at the community of the Northwest University, ranging from, like I said, Van der Bijl Park, Mafeking, Potchefstroom, we have a very, very interesting group of students and a very interesting community. So the reason why we do have the 3 stations is to be able to serve every little niche part of that. And we've had this conversation about amalgamating the 3 stations a lot over the last couple of years. But I think the reason why, especially the 3 station managers, have been quite adamant about the fact that we do have shared content, but it's extremely important for us to still keep our individual identities to be able to serve, like I said, every single part of our community. Because I always thought it's a little bit of a catch-22 situation with broadcasting in general in South Africa, because we have so many stations, like you can pick and choose out of anything. And that's a big mistake that a lot of stations make, is to try and please everybody. You're not going to please everybody. There is something for you. And especially like what you mentioned with reaching and going further, that's great. But reaching kind of within your lane, stick to your community. Because again, the second that you try to please too many people, you're going to lose the majority of everyone. Because pleasing everyone means pissing off everyone. That's unfortunately the case. So rather give who you know your community is the best possible quality of radio and the best possible storytelling that you can give, and that interaction with them, rather than kind of overstepping your reach, if you understand what I'm saying, because I think Precious, especially with you, you know exactly who your community is, so you know how you can speak to them. Same thing with Mike and with Fheelwane. Mike knows that Tuks can push the boundaries. That's their community. And the same with Pick FM as well, is you are not speaking to an age group. And that's something, and it sounds very idealistic. Icasa thinks we're speaking to an age group, but we're speaking to a state of mind. We have listeners that are 30 and 40 years up, but they've got the heart of the young person that we're talking to. The same thing with school kid. You're talking to the 15-year-old that wishes he was 21 years old. That's who you're talking to. I don't care what's on your ID. I care about how you listen and engage with the type of content that we're putting out there. And to come back to your question, Trisha, I think that's what makes our 3 campuses so unique and what lets our system work, because we can share messaging on certain platforms, but why try to alienate a lot of your listeners to try and put them all under one blanket? Let's give them as much as we can, as far as we can, because we do have the opportunity to do it in 3 different geographical and via content locations.
Mike, I see you've got a raised eyebrow there, and I do want to come to you, but I want to encourage everyone who's just listening in and tuning in from wherever you are, please interact with us. We'd like to hear what your thoughts are and what your understanding of campus radio is. And if you've got any questions for us, you can send a WhatsApp message to 079 528 0000 079 528 0000, or you can send a question through the chat, and we will try and read those conversations out to you, but those messages, and see if we can answer them. But Mike, you raised an eyebrow. Let's hear.
No, because I can't agree with anything more. And I've never heard that phrase before. We don't care what's on your ID, and I just think that that's such a beautiful way of looking at it. Because yeah, I agree 100% with what Charonike is saying. And to get back to your original question is, are we being bold enough as campus stations? I think that's not a problematic question to answer, but I think that it's a question that I think many of our campus radio stations have answered already, in the sense that many of us on this call, and many of us agree that campus radio in South Africa is such a unique thing. And yes, we've got our own category at the radio awards, but at the end of the day, we're all competing for the same amount of pie, or we're all competing for the same slice of pie. And our listeners are very, very, very different to commercial radio stations listeners, in the sense that they have got 90 different things that they are interested in. And it's not just TikTok and Instagram that we're competing with now. We're also competing with the likes of Tex in the City with her podcast, and Joe Rogan, and Hot in New York and their podcasts. So I think, getting back to the point of, are we being bold enough? I think from a campus station, having these kinds of discussions is very important, and sharing ideas like we're doing right now is very important. And I think that the only way the campus radio in South Africa is going to survive is if we have sessions like this, where we talk and openly discuss what our attitudes towards certain things are. I think, to answer your question, we can be bolder. I think that we can be pushing the boundaries a little bit. I think that we are not nipping at the heels of commercial radio stations as much as we need to. I think that there are certain commercial stations that are very comfortable in the positions that they're in, and I think the campus radio and the spirit of campus radio is pushing the boundaries, and I don't think that we're doing that enough. But I do also think that once the dust has settled after COVID-19, and once technology begins to play a much bigger role in campus broadcasting, I think that we can push the boundaries a little bit more.
Interesting. I do want to ask, you are saying we can do more collectively. Is there a need for us? And Precious, I'll start with you. We sit together at the NAB. Is there a need for us as campus stations to organize beyond just these conversations? Is there a need for us to form our own type of association, if you would call it that? Precious, let's start with you.
Yes, I think with that, I'll say yes, and if you ask again, I'm going to say yes. I think having sitting at, NAB and also being a part of NCRF, you kind of realize that the more discussions that happen, the more that stations can actually grow from each other. And as campus station, we tend to think we're far from each other in terms of geographically, but actually we are serving a similar kind of community with each other. So I would love for campus stations to actually come together and actually have something that is just for campus station, especially because we know right now the one element that's really affected us is advertising and revenue that is really going down. But, if we could come together to share the different ideas, because some of the stations are flourishing, some are not doing so well. And if we can come in a room like this and actually share ideas, whether it's how to deal with programming issues, how to deal with any kind of conflicts or issues that we're having within the stations even, we can learn more. When it comes to ICASA, as my colleagues have said, they just see us as just that one bit, the campus of interest. But the reality is that we can actually reach out and to a bigger community. But the more we can share ideas, and the more we find, the quicker actually we find a platform and how we can do it. I'm hoping post this, I'm encouraging it to happen very quick. We can actually learn so much from each other, because I go to certain conferences sometimes, I'm like, yeah, but my issue is they're not really understanding. So if we could have some sort of an NAB and NCRF that actually is just for campus station, I think we can really, really take over South Africa's youth market on another level.
Oh, great. Thank you. I guess we will all agree on that, and maybe let's take it upon us. Let's start this association of campus radio stations, and let's not exclude other college stations. I just do want to remind you that this specific session is supported by the US Embassy in Pretoria, and the Radio Days conference for years has been supported by Cass Media Africa. If you haven't yet registered for the keynote address and the main session that's coming up later on today, please go to Radio Days Africa and you'll be able to register there. I do encourage you to download our app. It's really cool. You'll be able to get interesting content and interact with us. I do see that there's quite a few questions that we have here, and I'm just waiting for a confirmation that we can take questions from the attendees. Lerato Mokwena, I do see you, but I want to read a question here from someone, and my screen is just not playing ball. Okay, good day, Kutlwano here. I want to get a sense of what the panel thinks about the gatekeepers culture. Are they finding that they aren't exporting more and more of their talent to the next level? And are they themselves not clipping their own staff members' wings? Campus radio question. And there's a question. Charonike, do you want to take a step at that? Is there a gatekeepers culture? Are we preventing our volunteers and students from moving to the next level, or is there something else that's preventing the growth or progression? Because I think one of the biggest thing, our reality is that people get into campus radio because they are still learning, but they are aiming to get into commercial stations. And like you said, for us, it's our 9 to 5. So this is our main gig. But for them, it's not their main. What's your response there to Kutlwano's question?
Yeah. Kutlwano, the gates are open. The walls are down. Please come and fetch them. Let's fetch as many as you want. I think that's a very interesting question, because the broadcasting area in campus stations looks a little bit different also, especially I'm going to speak out of Pug FM, because geographically, we are not in a position where we've got big commercials that can poach our guys, which on the one hand, it's sad. I would love for my volunteers to have the opportunity to go do a midnight slot at a commercial station, but geographically, it's not necessarily possible. But I think the idea of please don't come and poach our volunteers because then you lose your breakfast presenter. I think, to be quite honest, in the years that I've been in campus radio, you know what? Our mandate is skills development. My job is to create a platform where I train radio professionals to be able to go to the next level. So please come and poach them. This is what we're supposed to be doing. So we train them to be poached. And yes, I do know that it's unfortunately, it's an injury that comes with the sport of being in campus station management. Okay, but you also have to realize, as someone in management at a campus radio station, this is your job. So as much as, yes, we are there to give quality broadcasting, quality content for these kids, we are a stepping stone, and we're supposed to be a stepping stone, and we should stop trying to shy away from that. Your idea is to open as many doors as possible. And I'm kind of calling on the commercial broadcasters out there maybe listening right now. Please, we are here. We're training your next star for free, and we're doing our best. So please come and fetch them. My gates are open.
Okay, well, you know, I'm going to say this, Charonike. We do want them to come and fetch the best produced broadcasters, but Precious, I mean, there's a lot of investment that goes into training these volunteers and students. Do you think there's something that that commercial and the public service station needs to be paying, contributing towards campus radio station for the role that we are playing?
I think it would be great. Maybe that's something that, you know, within our new association that's coming up, we can actually speak to them about that, but as a group, you know, because if you go individually, they will not feel us as much. But it would be great to see commercial stations also assisting campus stations, because, you know, as my colleague said, as Shanika said, that we are here, we know our purpose, we understand skills development, train them to be the best. When they're best, we don't really want them to leave, but we hope they do. And that's the reality of it. But in terms of, you know, training, I think, you know, and also giving that experiential training to open those doors a bit more. There's very few stations that actually do that. You know, if you've got one of your top presenters who could actually get experience of just being in a commercial station for 2 weeks or even a month, that actually gives them an entirely different feel on the opportunities and the kind of platform they can go to. So I think a lot of commercial stations could open up their doors more and should open up their doors more. And we know they get more funds than us. They can also open that door a bit more towards that. But it would be great. And I think it's something we need to start speaking to the commercial stations about, because, you know, we are the skills development, the training ground. But I think it's a two-way thing that would have to start having that conversation, but actually putting things in place that will work for the future.
Thank you. Now, Refilwe, here's a question from Mpumelelo Mapena. It says, is there a way for campus stations to come together and collaborate? Yes, I think we've answered that question, but have a sort of simulcast where your presenters are broadcasting with Sefako Mahato FM presenters or someone from UJ or from Voice of Wits. Do you think there's an opportunity for us to do that as campus stations, Refilwe?
I think it's something that we should definitely look into. Why not? You know, maybe just to take it a step back and say, my concern would be, and this is now maybe a personal thing, for campus stations to also focus on media studies students, because radio still has a culture of having people who can study other things, engineering, whatever, and then dab into media, you know, and then succeed. And then there's this talented person who studied media, who put in the work, and they're not able to get as much because we're investing in people who aren't in the media space. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, unless we're saying it is redundant for students to study media studies, then we should invest in them and make sure that we're pushing them as much. And I think some of that collaborative work has to center around that. It has to center around maximizing the opportunity for students who studied journalism, for students who did media studies. So yeah, why not? It would be great. And also, our challenges are different. I think Mike mentioned it earlier. And some of those challenges are simply being in the University of Limpopo. How we train them and what they learn here will be very different to what they will learn at Wits or any other community radio station, wherever. So if we do the collaborative work, then you learn more. There's more. I don't see somebody saying no, that's a bad idea. That wouldn't make sense to me.
Yeah, that's great. I see there's quite a few questions that are coming in. There's a great encouragement for us to collaborate more and work together. So I do think that we should take that forward. But here's a question from Pritidi Bakwane. Greetings, my name is Pritidi Bakwane and I'm from Rise FM in Mpumalanga. The question is it actually, what is the future of radio presenters? How can they best position themselves and measure their developments towards the direction of bigger stations for the love of radio? And I will tie in Priti's question with Noni Kumalo's question, which says, what is your opinion on commercial stations hiring presenters that have bigger social media numbers instead of talent, which is where we play in the talent that we develop. Mike, you currently working on a project with a number of campus stations and YFM. So where do you see the future of broadcasters going, especially the ones that we are working with? And our stations numbers.
I'm gonna try and be as quick as possible, because if you give me the floor, I can speak on this topic for about 12 days. Okay, so there's two things that I think need to be addressed here. The first is the issue of a commercial station coming to a campus radio station and poaching a presenter or a producer or a music compiler or whatever it is something that's been happening in South Africa for the last 30 years. And that's a culture that isn't necessarily going to change. So one of the things that I do want to address, and I see that there's a couple of members of the commercial radio sector on this chat. One of my major concerns is that in the next couple of years, that model of people broadcasting on a campus radio station and then going into commercial is fine. Because you know, for the next couple of years, technology isn't really going to catch up with us. But in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see a very, very different shift in the way in which people are doing things in South Africa. We're going to see a lot of young broadcasters moving away from traditional sort of terrestrial radio stations like Tuks FM, Pik FM, Radio Turf, and they're going to be focusing a little bit more on Anchor FM, which is a radio station that fits into your smartphone. And the major problem with this little thing is the fact that commercial radio stations are going to not only start needing to compete with Anchor FM and Spotify and the apps that are slowly but surely developing radio and talk forms of broadcasting on a smartphone. But the other thing that's going to happen is commercial stations are going to the talent pool is going to dry up. So to go back to what Precious was saying, and just to chat to Priti and to answer Priti's question, at the end of the day, every single thing that we're talking about today comes down to the issue of quality. The reason why commercial radio stations are looking at our presenters in the campus sector is because of the quality that we are able to not only nurture, but also to focus on. And obviously every single one of us as radio programmers, as station managers, as producers, as music compilers, we're looking at getting the best quality for our listeners first, and as a result commercial stations are looking at it from there. So essentially what I'm trying to say is to answer Priti's question, how do we get more people into the industry? How do we get more people to commercial radio stations? How do we get more people to have these kinds of discussions? The very first thing that we need to look at is the fact that quality is the main focus. If we are putting effort into training people and making sure that the quality of people that we're putting out there is 100% all the time, I think the campus radio has got a bright enough future. And the other thing that I need to talk about is the issue of accountability. And we need to be accountable to each other, and we need to say, yo, listen, we can't rely on commercial radio stations to come and help us all the time. So we need to be accountable. And Shoeshoe, you mentioned earlier the initiative that I started with YFM, where we went to a whole bunch of campus radio stations. We need to be accountable for our own positions, and we need to say, okay, cool. Yes, we are a campus-based community, but we are still a community of broadcasters, and we can't rely on NAB. We can't rely on the commercial radio sector. We can't even rely on the community radio sector. We need to be making these positions available for ourselves. So yeah, and I realize that I've taken quite a bit of time in rounding off this question. But at the end of the day, Shoeshoe, it's an issue of quality. We need to be accountable for the quality that we're putting out into the industry. And the only way in which we're going to do that is if we, as campus radio stations, get together and we start having conversations and we start saying, yo, this is what we do. This is what works for us. This is why we do X, Y, and Z. This is why we've got 6 people in the last 3 years who've gone into the radio industry to work full time.
Thank you, Mike. And, I mean, we've only got a few minutes remaining, and I do want us to start concluding. So there's 2 points or areas that I think are important that we haven't necessarily really covered. Mike, you just mentioned technology and how your audio platforms are coming in. You've got Clubhouse that's coming through, and I join those often. And this is audio-only social media platform. Twitter introduced Twitter Spaces. Looks very much like a panel discussion on a radio show. We had Mark Zuckerberg, CEO of Facebook, saying that they are working on audio-only features. So I guess there's no question on the importance of radio and audio-only stories. There's a need for us to adopt and move with the times, also as campus stations, to remain sustainable. But also another question for our sustainability as stations is financial viability. And I think as we closed, we'll start with you, Pheelwane. Where's the future of campus radio, and are we taking advantage of technology or tools that technology has made available to us? And are we able to make money out of those? Pheelwane.
Sure, I think this is a big question for me to answer, but definitely I think all stations, everybody in the managerial position at any radio station is supposed to be equipping themselves with the knowledge, the trends, and making sure that their community radio station is upbeat. That is not negotiable if the station is to survive. And that for me is obviously the context matters, because like I said, if you're at the University of Limpopo, the context is going to be very different to a community radio station or Tuks or whatever it is. What they have access to might be different to what we have access to, but there's a need for all of us to be moving towards the change so that it doesn't knock you out of the way.
Charonike, let's just 30 seconds, let's hear from you.
I think coming back to I'm just going to, Mike's word of the day is accountability, and that's throughout, whether it is in ad sales, whether it's in broadcasting content, whatever it is. I think we as campus radio stations should stop feeling sorry for ourselves because we're not getting the financial piece of the pie from ad agencies. You know your market better than anyone else. So this might seem a little bit harsh, but I think, like I said, we should stop feeling sorry for ourselves and start proving to both local clients, regional clients, national clients, go to them and show them what you're worth. Don't go to them with Facebook likes or don't go to them with listenership numbers. That's not what we're looking for. Go to them with engagement, prove to them why you are worth their money. That's the only way you're going to be financially sustainable.
Precious, thank you very much. Precious, your thoughts?
I think she covered it quite well. We need to relook at how we actually engaging. We can no longer sell social media as we used to. And there's so many new platforms that we actually need to look at one thing, and that is how we're going to adapt to the changes of technology. I think we can bring certain elements into actually to play a part in our radio stations and use those platforms as part of the radio stations, but we need to start adapting to the changes of technology. And yes, that's going to take some time, but as Mike did say, it's something we need to do. Otherwise, where we are in existence, we might be very less, because podcasting, for instance, is becoming so huge, but it's not a space that we're truly playing right now. So something like that is that adapt to the changes of technology. We need to do that and start selling ourselves different from the norm.
Thank you. Mike, you've got a few seconds also, your concluding words.
Yeah, so my concluding words, you touched on finances earlier. Tuks FM is in a very unique situation in the sense that we are almost 100% focused on advertising to bring in our finances. And my sales manager and acting station manager at the moment, Caitlin, has not stopped selling since this time last year. In fact, March last year, she's been on the phone and she's been having sleepless nights about keeping the station lights on. And I think that there's no easy answer to this. If we look at what we should actually be doing, what we should be doing is taking an audience and delivering it to a client. We should be taking a captive audience and delivering it to a client, and that goes back to quality in programming, quality in broadcasting is what we need to be focusing on.
Thank you very much, Mike. Thank you, everyone. Just some few comments there from Joseph Maramba. Facebook has rolled out rooms now available in the USA, and Spotify has launched Green Room. And then there's a question here from Lawrence is, do Campus Station consider students from other universities and other faculties? The answer is yes, so be in touch with your campus radio station. You should be able to access those. Thank you everyone for joining in, and thank you for the contributors. Precious Pheelwane from Sefako Makgatho University FM station manager there. Michael Bauer from Tuks FM, that's attached to University of Pretoria. Refilo Mudipane from Radio TEF, and also Charonike from Park FM, one of the stations from Northwest University. My name is Shoeshoe. Again, don't forget, register for the session that's coming up later on today, radiodaysafrica.co.za. The session that you just listened to or watched was brought to you by the US Embassy in Pretoria. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a lovely day and see you later in the afternoon.
Thank you for joining this Radio Days Africa amplified session. For highlights, podcasts, and more, visit radiodaysafrica.co.za.